Phinehas, a grandson of Aaron, the first high priest of the Israelites, is mentioned in several places in the Bible, but his most famous story is found in the book of Numbers 25:1-18. The Israelites, encamped in the plains of Moab, were invited by the Moabites and Midianites, who lived in the area, to a feast in honor of their gods. Many Israelites attended the feast, indulging in the food and wine offered and engaging in sexual immorality with the Moabite and Midianite women. This act of disobedience enraged God, who sent a plague upon the Israelites, causing thousands of deaths. Moses, the leader of the Israelites, pleaded with God to halt the plague. God instructed Moses to identify and punish the men who had led the people astray. Phinehas, witnessing an Israelite man named Zimri bring a Midianite woman named Cosbi into his tent, was filled with righteous anger. He took his spear, entered the tent, and found Zimri and Cosbi lying together. He then killed them both. God was pleased with Phinehas' actions. He ended the plague and made a covenant with Phinehas and his descendants, promising them an eternal priesthood in Israel. Phinehas epitomized courage and righteousness. He was unafraid to uphold what was right, even when it was unpopular. He was also a faithful servant of God, his obedience rewarded. Phinehas' story serves as a reminder to always obey God and avoid sin. It also underscores God's justice and his punishment of those who transgress against him. And finally, it highlights God's grace and his forgiveness of those who repent of their sins. The actions of Phinehas have been the subject of much debate and discussion throughout history. Some have commended his actions as necessary to uphold God's law and morality, while others have criticized them as excessive and violent. It is important to consider the context of the story and the severity of the sin that Phinehas witnessed when evaluating his actions. The Israelites' involvement with the Moabite and Midianite women was not merely a violation of social norms, it was an act of idolatry, a direct rejection of God and his commandments. This sin had brought a deadly plague upon the Israelites, and Phinehas' actions, while severe, were seen as necessary to halt the plague and restore God's favor. It is also important to note that Phinehas' actions were not motivated by personal gain or vengeance. He was not seeking to punish Zimri or Cosbi out of spite or anger. Instead, he was acting out of a deep sense of loyalty to God and his desire to see God's law upheld. While Phinehas' actions may be considered extreme by modern standards, it is important to remember the cultural and historical context in which they took place. In ancient Israel, capital punishment was considered an appropriate and just response for certain crimes, including idolatry. Ultimately, the story of Phinehas is a complex and challenging one. It raises questions about the limits of obedience, the nature of justice, and the role of violence in society. It is a story that has been debated and discussed for centuries, and it continues to provoke thought and discussion today.